Hey guys, welcome to the Masculinity Lessons from Iranian History. Why did I make this video? Because in recent news, the Iranian president died from a sudden helicopter crash just recently. I'm also of Iranian heritage. I'm born in America, but my parents are from Iran. So I thought this would be very interesting to talk about some things that I've learned from Iranian history because I'm a huge history buff. And I think it's important for anyone who is of the culture or not of the culture, we should study history because a lot of times history teaches us a lot of lessons that we would have never known unless we studied the past. So let's talk about Alexander the Great. I'm going to move this right over here for now. Alexander the Great was not a Persian king. However, he did ended up conquering Persia, so he did technically become a Persian king after he conquered it. So he had a desire to conquer the Persians. Throughout history, the Greeks, at the time, this is all before the era of Christ, for many years, the Persians had the largest empire throughout the world. It touched into parts of even Greece itself. It was in even parts of India. It went to North Africa. It was all over the Middle East. So we're talking about a massive empire. The Greeks, on the other hand, were a bunch of small communities that didn't have a huge empire. The Persians, they often had battles with the Greeks. So if you know the movie 300, for example, that's one of the famous battles that took place. So he understood that his past being a Greek, a lot of times they were subjugated to hardship through the Persians. A lot of times Persians bought out the Greeks and made them into mercenaries where they would use this information, leverage this information to have Greeks work alongside with the Persians that wanted to turn against their own culture so they can conquer more Greek land. Because the Greeks were really like the next big thing that were after the Persians that had any chance of defeating the Persians at the time. So Alexander, being born into royalty, his father, I believe, it was King Philip II, and King Philip was somebody who, at the time, Greece in this area where they were having their ruling was Macedonia, not to be confused with the current day Macedon. Or excuse me, I'm getting that wrong. Not to be confused with current day Macedonia. So Macedon is what it used to be called back in the day. So what happened is that when Alexander was growing up, becoming eventually a king, uh, he would constantly put himself in battles, right? He would like a lot of times would do practice battles with his like counterparts, like his generals and things like that, just to get him mentally prepared to go after the Persians at some point. And with divine timing, a lot of crazy things happened between King Philip and Alexander. King Philip ended up getting like assassinated. There were a lot of things that were going on. In fact, Alexander wasn't really the heir of taking over King Philip's position, but because he took King Philip's assassination as an opportunity to galvanize the Greeks and say that it was the Persians that assassinated King Philip. So he in his mind already knew that I want to go conquer Persia because the Persians have put us in a very, very bad situation. They have stolen our women, our gold, all these different things that he had in his mind, and they're barbarians, right? He already knew that he wants to eventually take over the empire at some point and defeat the Persians. So throughout time, he was training relentlessly for that moment to come. And the moment came, so he took full advantage of it. This prepared him for his destiny. His purpose was to become a conqueror. His dreams became a reality through that solid vision. For years, he would be fanatical about one day becoming ruler, king of the world. And what happened is he went on a campaign. First, he traveled through the Levant, I believe, which is like a part in the Middle East, like where it's like on the western side of the Middle East. And he ended up conquering, I believe, that area. Then there were parts of northern Egypt that he took over. And then, by the way, northern Egypt is Persian territory at this point. So once he took over the Egyptian territory, Darius III, who was the last king of Persia during that saga when Alexander was around, was noticing that Alexander was just taking over a bunch of land, and there were actually some Persians that were turning against Darius III. He was getting very frustrated about this. He's thinking, like, what the hell? Why is it that this guy, who I thought was just like a simple, an easy skirmish that I can just like get rid of, why is he taking over so much land in the territory, and why is he becoming a force to be reckoned with? And crazy enough, he had two battles side by side against Alexander. One of the battles that he faced Alexander in person, Alexander even had the audacity, the courage to throw a spear, which nearly killed Darius III, but ended up killing the guy next to him, which was like the person that managed a chariot that Darius III was on. So what was pretty freaking crazy about this is that Darius III was absolutely shocked by this whole situation that happened. Now, two things to understand about this slide really quick before we go to the next slide. Alexander the Great went through a lot of hardship growing up. Darius III, when he acquired the throne, it was done through a marriage. So he married a woman who was part of Persian royalty, and he ended up acquiring the throne through that. He was technically a military guy, but he didn't have to fight in a lot of battles. Like, think about it this way. It's as if like you are literally born into a chain of businesses. You didn't have to work your way up from, let's say, being a janitor, being a cook, or being some low level entry job. It was all done through nepotism. So once he married the princess, ended up making her a queen. They got married, and he accepted the new heir of royalty. He became the king of Persia. But during that time, he was very relaxed. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't going on any crazy campaigns. He wasn't going on like intense battles. So his quest and his thirst to expand Persia was more just like, I just want to maintain Persia. I don't want to like expand it. He didn't really do anything to go above and beyond to make Greece like non-existent or anything like that. So Alexander's thirst for conquering Persia was a lot more than Darius III's thirst to conquer Greece. And what we can do is look on this slide right over here, that the successful habits that Alexander had. He had a solid ambition, conquer Persia, and free and liberate the Greeks. He was eating healthy foods. So I did a lot of research on Alexander, and I learned that like he would, back then, of course, there's no GMOs and stuff like that. So he's eating like the best of the best food. He would take care of his body. He was always in great physical shape. He took action. So there was no jerking around. There was no like dilly-dally and procrastination coming from Alexander's end. He was extremely convicted on taking action every day. And the campaign to conquer Persia is not an overnight thing. Like, we're talking about months and being on foot. There were no airplanes. There were no jet skis, crazy, high-speed boats or anything. There was a lot of physical prowess that was required out of his soldiers. And the crazy part is, a lot of times his soldiers and his generals were telling him, Alexander, you've done a lot already. Why don't we just turn back and just go back to Greece, or just settle in our stuff here, and then we can defeat the Persians, like, let's say a few months from now. But Alexander was like, no, I want to go and keep defeating them. And I need to defeat Darius III. He was obsessed with defeating him. It was just this mental game between them. So the thoughts that he had, of course, were insane, actually. I mean, I even mentioned this at the bottom, but he believed he truly was a god. He truly believed he was a god. The energy that went into this, right? Like, there was so much passion, which affected his mood, of course. His focus was so vivid. And because he was so productive on internalizing his vision, because this is a video I talk about on the masculinity triangle of success. First, you need a purpose, then you need a program, and then you need systems. So he already had the purpose. I'm going to liberate the Greeks and conquer the Persians. His program. I have soldiers, I have foot soldiers, I have a navy, I have royalty on my side. I have all these different people that can help me build my vision. And because he was so definitive in his purpose, people looked up to him, people wanted to work with him, and people didn't want to stand in his way. And the crazy part is there were Greeks actually that did turn on him, like the mercenaries I was telling you about earlier. Those Persians that bought the Greek soldiers or bought Greek historians or whatever, used them against the Greeks so they can get some inside information on their empire. So what Alexander did actually was very ruthless. He killed those people. He killed them, and he said like, and he first like kidnapped, or he caught them, and then he brought them back into the Greek military camps, and he told them like, how dare you turn on the Greek? How dare you turn on our gods and things like that, which resulted in him being in him executing all those people. So from that point, the Greeks were like, okay, we can't turn our back against Alexander the Great because he will literally, there will be consequences, right? So that was his program, right? Like, we need to reunite as Greeks and go against the evil barbaric Persians that have been holding us back and have not allowed us to prosper and allow our culture to grow and all these things that they had in their mind. So there was consistent growth in this, right? Every day, Alexander was becoming more influential, was becoming more of the man of the people. And fulfilling his purpose obviously led to all these things, right? So his purpose was being fulfilled constantly. Let's talk about the masculinity triangle of success again, right? It goes to purpose, it goes to program, and then it goes to systems. So his purpose was being fulfilled. Going into his program, there was structure behind his program. And because there's structure behind the program, the systems of getting things done was automated. So, of course, do you think Alexander is the only one that's fighting a battle? No, he has soldiers. He has automated, he has people that are constantly fighting for him and believing in him. So the sphere of influence that he has is being fulfilled through other people, which created his legacy of greatness. So there are historians to this day that are still writing about him. In fact, there's me who's making a video about it. So about his legacy, which is insane. Like, that is remarkable. While others feared the Persians, Alexander knew he had the edge to defeat them because he was obsessed with believing in himself. While he was obsessed with defeating Darius III, taking over the Persian Empire, he was more obsessed about his vision. Because when you make it more about yourself, what ends up happening is that your sphere of influence and men will start to look up to you because you have something that is so powerful that others are inspired by the way you carry yourself, by the way you talk, by the way you walk. This can be applied in today's modern history. You don't have to be a conqueror or king of any royalty to have people look up to you. I mean, look at influencers. I have a coaching community that I help guys. Guys will look up to me, of course, right? So when you have a vision and you're so convicted in who you are and you're fully in your authenticity, people will want to be led by you. People will want to be influenced by you. They're open to hear what you have to share with them. He knew not to listen to the naysayers and the non-believers. So along the journey, and even before his campaign to go against Persia, there were so many times that people told him he was ridiculous and there's no way that you can defeat the mighty Persian Empire. But he knew that there was a way. He knew that he had something above all the Persian kings. He knew there was something that he could just pierce a hole. There was a flaw in the mighty Persian Empire that he knew that he can take down. He was standing on something massive. That was his vision, right? Again, definitive purpose, going into the structure program, which creates automated systems. He saw himself as a god. Now, here's the crazy part about seeing yourself as a god. I know I'm not God. Alexander legitimately thought he was a god, right? I do not think that I'm a god. However, I do believe that I have godly strength, godly powers, godly vision of myself. And again, I know I'm mortal. I'm not immortal. I'm definitely mortal. But there's something about just believing in your strength and your power and your purpose and your vision, your greatness, your legacy. You start to think and move like a god. And that's why, like, guys, like, what do you think people look up to? People look up to men who respect themselves, right? And obviously, God has a lot of respect for himself. So people look up to God. Pretty crazy stuff. Hope you guys are getting value so far from this. Let's now go to a more modern time of history, which took place many years ago, but let's look into a more modern time. The Iranian 1979 revolution. So Iran/Persia, okay, at the time when it was Alexander against Darius III, it was called Persia. Modern day, it's now called Iran. So Iran had been under monarchy, and I do believe it was for 2,500 years before the Iranian Revolution happened. Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was the last Shah of Iran, the last king of Iran, but he lost control of his people. This guy comes along. His name is Ruhollah. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, and I'm Persian. Ruhollah Khomeini. Okay, led a revolution and took over Iran. So, what's really interesting about Khomeini is that even though I don't agree with like the direction of how Iran is, you got to respect the fact that this guy was able to galvanize Iranians that were fed up with the way that the Shah was leading Iran, right? You just have to give respect to this, because this is like insane amount of influence. How is it that this man who was exiled from Iran, I believe for 14 years was exiled, which means that you are kicked out of the country, right? Imagine being exiled and you're from the United States. You're exiled from the United States for 14 years. You can't go to the United States at all. This man was exiled for 14 years and led a revolution where he turned around monarchy rule. I mean, we're talking about royalty for years. And then it got flipped into I believe it's non-secular, I think, or it's secular. I forgot the difference between secular and non-secular, but I know that there's no separation of church and religion and government. Like, it's all consolidated, right? So please put in the comments so that way I know 100% what the answer is again. But Khomeini came from impoverished beginnings. Like, he wasn't super rich. He didn't have a lot of wealth. He was, he had a lot of things going against him. But what was really fascinating is that he was able to speak to the people better than the Shah of Iran could speak to his people. So the monarchy, of course, ends in 1979, results in religious governing. What's really nuts about this is that when the Shah was, when he left the country, he thought that the Western powers like the United States, Germany, France, the UK, he thought that those guys would help put the Shah back in power, but it ended up not happening. So that was literally the last time the last time he left Iran was literally the last time he was going to see Iran ever again. So what was nuts about this whole journey of Khomeini to get to his position of power is he obviously taught about the power of the Quran. He taught power of Islam. He taught the power of how Islamic beliefs will help Iran for the better. And he spoke to people that were from very rural areas. He was able to just have men and really speaking mostly men, he was able to have men understand that whatever direction that the Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was leading Iranians was not going to bring them satisfaction, happiness, a peace of mind. And it's crazy because this guy came from a very rural area of Iran. Like, he wasn't like a super highly educated man that went to the University of Tehran, if I'm not mistaken. And what's nuts in modern day history, we're talking about this man has been compared to figures like Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Fidel Castro. So I just find it really fascinating. It's just such a political thing. I feel for the people of Iran. I really do. I feel bad for the people of Iran because there's high inflation. There's a lot of like sad, unfortunate things. There are a lot of executions. Women's rights is not really there. It's really unfortunate. I'm just talking about this on a historical standpoint and a influential standpoint, that this guy, this religious figure who was able to turn the tides of history and really shape up the Middle East a lot. Okay. You can do more research on this. I just thought this was like absolutely fascinating how he was able to just remove the monarchy and bring like Islamic rule into Iran as the governing structure behind it. So let's look at the successful habits of Khomeini, right? So there's something I found interesting about Khomeini. I'm going to read this quote right now. He's so punctual that if he doesn't turn up for lunch at exactly 10 past, everyone will get worried because his work is regulated in such a way that he turned up for lunch at exactly that time every day. He goes to bed exactly on time. He eats exactly on time, and he wakes up exactly on time. He changes his cloak every time he comes back from the mosque. So, what does this mean from everything that we talked about so far regarding Alexander the Great as well? Is that a purpose, right? Going to masculinity triangle success. So Khomeini had a purpose that he believed he was here on earth to bring more Islamic rule and Islamic beliefs into Iran. The westernization of Iran that the Shah wanted to implement was not in alignment with how Iran was supposed to be governed based on what he believes. And then the program that Khomeini created was having his like religious believers and followers. What was crazy is like when he was exiled, there were like so many of his devout followers like would go into that country that he was exiled. I think it was France, and they would look up to his readings on the Quran and like his readings on his view of the world. So he was such a big opponent against the Shah. Yet, yeah, but while he was still a big opponent, the Shah even took him seriously, and that's why he got exiled, right? The point is that the purpose was there. The program was structured, right? He had all these religious followers wanting to back him up, support him. And then what happened is the automated systems of the masculinity triangle, how we fit this all in, is that there were people where the religious scripture of what Khomeini was sharing, it would be sent to remote villages of Iran, and it would go to the poor, it would go to the rich, and it would go to all these different people to a point where like Khomeini's words and his influence was all over Iran. So what the crazy part is that when Khomeini was discovered that the Shah has left Iran, the military was confused as hell, right? They're absolutely confused. Like, what do we do now? So Khomeini was on his way back, flying back into Iran. He showed no fear. He showed no fear of like he's ready to return to Iran and take that responsibility of controlling Iran and establishing his religious ruling. And what happened is when the military saw him, they accepted him with wide open arms. They started hugging him. They started shaking his hand. There were people that were like coming to kiss his feet and stuff. Like it's just crazy, absolutely crazy that people will look up to you so much when you have a definitive purpose, you have a program that creates structure, which allows you to create your sphere of influence, and then your sphere of influence is automated through your systems, like in the masculinity triangle video that I talk about. So what does this all mean? Leaders lose power to those who are more hungry for change. So in the event with Alexander the Great, he was more hungry than Darius III was. The Shah of Iran was not as hungry to keep his people in check, the Iranian people in check, but Khomeini had a lot more hunger and a lot more drive and a lot more desire and a lot more ambition, just like Alexander the Great, to replace their opponent. Victory is given to those who are more structured. So the more structured you are in your company that you work for, or your entrepreneurial business, or even in your relationship with your girlfriend, you have to have victory. Excuse me, you have to have structure, because the structure will create the victory. If you don't have structure, nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody gives a shit about like your vision, because you just don't have a definitive way of communicating how are you going to achieve what you want to achieve. Let's move this over here. So structure equals respect. A woman is going to respect you when you have structure in your life. When you have structure in your life, she will respect your rules. She will respect your words. She will respect your integrity. And when you have that kind of respect, you then become influential. The women in your life will look up to you, and they will spread the knowledge of what you share with them, right? In a healthy relationship, which leads to a healthy marriage, the woman is influenced by her man. And if you're going to be leading a team of guys, right, they need to see that you're structured. But if you're lacking punctuality, you don't know how to communicate well, you doubt yourself, you lack a lot of confidence, no one's going to respect you, which no one's going to feel like you're influential. So men also strive off a definitive purpose and the why behind it. So we talked a lot about definitive purpose. Why? Why do you want to conquer the Persian Empire, right? If I was to go back in time, if I was to go back in time and ask Alexander the Great, why did you want to go after the Persian Empire? He would give me a definitive why behind it. And it would be a profound why. If I were to go to Khomeini and ask him from back in the day, why did you want to change the governmental structure of Iran and replace the Shah with your political beliefs and political structure? He would give me a profound why. Everything is profound in your why, which leads to a more definitive purpose. It doesn't matter the length of history. It can always be changed, right? So Alexander the Great, for many, many years, right? He was saying that the Greeks, well, let me just say this. The Greek history always showed that the Greeks were less in their empire than in territorial space compared to the Persian Empire. Alexander took over, I believe, the Persian Empire when he was 21 or 22, something along the lines of that. I mean, we're talking about a young 20-year-old defeating a whole array of Persian armies and replacing Darius III. Like, it's absolutely crazy. Now, Khomeini was on the older side when he took over Iran, but we had two men, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi and Khomeini, who were both on the older side. But it doesn't matter about your age. It doesn't matter about how long a structure has been put in place. If there's another structure out there that is stronger, definitive, more profound, it's more influential and more to be respected, that system will replace the antiquated system. It will replace the weaker system. It will replace the more it will replace the system where you're just, where if it's too weak, it's too chaotic, the structure one will take the place. So let's go into stepping into authenticity, right? So the ego is a lot of times the reason why there's a weak purpose, a weak program, and a weak system. The ego defeated the weak, right? We're talking about Darius III and Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. The ego defeated them, right? They were in their heads. They were not thinking straight. They were not thinking, how do I allow my authenticity to shine in this case, right? They were lacking a lot of structure. They were lacking a lot of identity. They were lacking a lot of definitive purpose. Your ego will put you in a ditch unless you know how to conquer it. So Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, Alexander the Great, Darius III, and Khomeini, right? These guys all had ego, and they also had a definitive identity. But the difference is that Khomeini and Alexander the Great had a more definitive, more structured, and more, and they had the ability to conquer their ego to the point where they're not going to let their negative thought patterns or their lack of humility. Excuse me, they didn't have lack of humility, but they were able to control how much humility they were able to open themselves up to. Because they were so humble and they were so thirsty for knowledge, and they were so thirsty to understand how they can promote more their purpose, their ego never really took over their mind to the point where they lost themselves. But Darius III and Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, they lost themselves to their ego. Authenticity promotes the purpose, the program, and the system. So the more you're in your ego, it does not promote these three things. The more you're in your authenticity, it promotes these three things and leaves space for you to have a more profound and interesting and a greater perspective of really who you are, which creates that respect for the influence. Regardless of how far you think you are, you can always change the course of history. Never doubt yourself. It's I'm in this industry, right? And there's a lot of egotistical dating coaches who bash women, a lot of podcasts that bash women. My platform is not about bashing women. It's about uniting men and women together, creating harmony, creating peace, and creating a family structure. Regardless of where I am in life, I'm never going to doubt myself and think that I don't have enough to offer to the world. So let's go to the final slide, the Ego Detox online course. So I have created a course called the Ego Detox. And I created this because I want to help you understand how the ego has been holding you back. So growing up, was having a lot of trouble with my ego, but I took a lot of careful intentions to understand why the ego was holding me back. So this course, I want to just pass it down to you guys and have you guys learn from my mistakes so you guys don't make those same mistakes, right? I want to help you learn the methods of how to conquer your ego. So when you are going up against your mind, it's not easy a lot of times. Like, you will have many moments where you doubt yourself. I don't want you to be in that situation. I want you to learn how to like really conquer your ego completely. With that being said, I want you to become a visionary and a conqueror of your legacy. So a lot of times I think I'm a king. I was mentioning to be even bold, to think I have godly powers. I know I'm mortal, but I feel that the more I'm in alignment with myself, the closer I am with God. And the more I'm in alignment with my authenticity, the less I'm in alignment with my ego, right? I want to help you dive deep into your power of influencing others. So the more you step into authenticity, the more you step into conquering your ego, the more you will have the power of influencing others. Website is included in the description of the video. It's going to be down below. So just want to say again, guys, like, this was a very interesting video that I made. I never thought I'd make something like this, but I just feel like there's so many connections with Iranian history, and also understanding how the ego works and understanding how you can become more influential as a man. So thank you so much. Please follow me, subscribe on my social media, on my channel as well for YouTube, and I will see you guys on the next video.